Topic. Government contractors often throw around this term PWin. I've been doing this a long time, a couple decades now. But what does PWin mean, right? PWin stands for probability of winning. Different ways of kind of saying that, but basically probability of winning. But that never made sense to me, right? As I worked with different companies out there on their teams, whether they were subcontractors or prime contractors, large or small, and people kept throwing around this PWin term, I always got confused with the way that they were talking about it, because the reality is the probability of winning is based on the number of winning proposals the government likes sitting on the contracting officer's desk. If the contracting officer has 4 proposals, then my probability of winning that contract is 1 out of 4, or 25%. The other problem I had with PWins, often I'd see people just guess. And maybe it was an educated and informed guess, but they were still just guessing. There was a field that said PWin, or in the old days, we used to do a lot of PowerPoints to talk about the state of our capture activities, and people would put in a number. I'm like, well, how did you get that number? How are you saying 60% or 30% or 80%? No one ever said low numbers, right? That was always a big one. I prefer the term winning proposal score. I did a training a long time ago about death to the PWin is what I called it. And what I meant was the PWin is too random. When I started thinking about winning proposal score, I was saying, how do I get a winning proposal out the door? A winning proposal is one that when the contracting officer and the program office are looking at it, they're like, wow, I want to award this contract to this company. There might be other competitors who also have winning proposals on there, but what you don't want to be is just compliant or not even a winning proposal that they want to look at, right? And so a winning proposal score, fundamentally, it's just this idea of doing the right things that lead you to this stage that's in there. So I am going to talk about winning proposal score, but I'll use PWin most of the time to talk about it because that's the common term that's out there, right? So today we're going to talk about how can you increase that PWin? How can you ensure that you're submitting a winning proposal to the government? I'm going to cover down in today's training for 10 steps to increase your PWin for government contractors. And these 10 steps, and I'm just very quickly, I'm just going to read them because we do have people that just listen and don't see the slides. But these 10 are having a requirements understanding, aligning your core competencies, past performance, agency understanding, customer understanding, teaming partners, proposal pricing, competition, and staffing. And then the 10th is bringing all those together for a cumulative score. When I walk you through these, each one of these, I'm going to go pretty fast because we only have a 30-minute window. I'm going to give you a high-level overview of how I work with my customers so that they are doing sales. They are truly doing capture on the opportunities. They're not just putting it into a pipeline, kind of checking it out occasionally, and then, oh, the RFP drops and we write a proposal that we feel good about. Well, you're missing the whole capture part. And I'm hoping to touch on that today with these 10 steps that you can take. If that's what you're looking for, and if you would like me to take these slides and these steps and put it into a newsletter article that you then have access to afterwards, just put rock the PWin into the chat. If you want me to provide this information afterwards in a kind of written format that you can download, say rock the PWin in the chat. If you don't know who I am, my name is 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗏 McDonnell. I am the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner, primarily in the IT business and professional services, et cetera, network engineering, enterprise architecture. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I want for you. That's what this training is designed to do, to give you an intro into this idea of how do you have predictable results from your capture activities. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to our newsletter. It's the Government Contracting Success newsletter. It's the largest one out there on LinkedIn for government contractors. And when you get in there, you'll find all sorts of great information related to government contracting, how you can succeed, strategic plans, point of contacts, people's information so you can get into agencies with information. We have supplier portals, long-range acquisition forecasts. Often what we try to do in this newsletter is take stuff that's very hard to find and just make it easy for you to find. We try to shave off hours of research for you by putting this information out. So subscribe to that newsletter. We're pretty proud of ourselves. We just got over 14,000 subscribers this week, so it's a good metric for us. The other thing is we had over, I think over 150 people register for today's training, 140, 150 people. And I want to say thank you for registering. When you register, it's first your way of being able to say thank you to us, and that's appreciated. The second thing is when you register for training, you're enabling everybody else to network with you. We're going to have easily over 200 people here today, but unless all 200 plus people comment, it's hard to network, right? It's hard to follow up afterwards. But when you register in the training, that information, just basically your LinkedIn profile is there for other people to come back and look at you. And if you're here for networking, you want to make sure you register for training. We got 3 more trainings this week, and I'd love to have you in those. The last thing is just make sure that you're hitting the bell notification on my profile. Just go to my LinkedIn profile up on the banner, top right-hand side. Right below the banner is the bell. When you hit that, you'll be notified of important information that I put out. Okay, really quickly before we dive into the meat of today's training, speaking of increasing the PWin, one of them was teaming. I have a $1 billion company that reached out to me. They're one of the top 5 companies that are out there in the federal government space in the professional services IT world. They reached out to me and they're looking for 5 small businesses to join their team. You need to have 3 past performances, and they need to come with PWSs that align to that. So if you're farther along, I would submit as probably like 5 million plus level, but you can be smaller. I'm not actually giving you a dollar limit. But what they're looking for is companies that have experience in artificial intelligence, big data, cloud computing, cybersecurity, edge computing, extended reality, which is a new one for me, health information technology, the Internet of Things, mobile IT, quantum computing, and zero trust networking. If that's your space and you have the experience, the past performance in federal past performance, reach out to me on LinkedIn and direct messaging. Just let me know you can do it. And when you reach out, supply your UEI, because what I'll do is go check on USA Spending to make sure I see it there before I introduce you to this company. But they're looking for 5 companies they really want to add into their team, which is, as far as I'm concerned, is a huge win for any small business that is able to get that done. Okay, so I've got about 21 minutes to go through 10 categories on how I track PWinning. And I'm going to take a little longer on this first slide because it will set the standard. All the slides look like this. The information is different. So the first thing is in my capture pipeline, and I build capture pipelines inside of sales pipelines inside of Microsoft SharePoint and with Teams. It's just an easy place to go. Most companies already pay for that service, so why get a separate one? In there, when I'm building it, I have a set of fields that all, and that's what these are, that all align to the PWin. And so as I work with people, I'm like, I'm looking for that to improve. So here I have a scoring system, and I'll go through the details in 1 second with the actual requirements. But you can see it goes A to F and the score. And so the low score is F, like a failing grade, and the high score is A, where I'm getting 5 points. And so each one of these look like this. I'm going to actually do another version where I begin to weight them. But for the moment, they all follow this standard that you're going from F to A, and you're trying to get higher up. And the higher you get, the more your score added together with all the others, the higher your PWin. And so the first one that I do, and I did this pretty much in the order that you're able to build this as you're doing capture. The first thing you want to do with an opportunity is understand the requirements. And so you can see here, F is no understanding of the requirements. I don't even know what's in there. It's an opportunity that's sitting in the pipeline. That's totally cool. Sometimes you put an opportunity in because it looks good. And one of your next steps is to understand the requirements, to really do that qualifying process. So we always begin at 0. We work our way up. Here, initial understanding of the requirements. This is where I'm looking at the document and I can see what's in there. I'm like, okay, I get an understanding. Then as you start moving forward, it gets harder to score points. And I'm just going to call it score points for the moment because, it's a positive way. So D, here I have an understanding of the requirements after having met with the customer one way or another. So I got in and I was talking with, it could be the contracting shop and the small business professional or core if they're working with it. But generally, we're talking about the program office. And so I'm getting in and talking. Certainly, when I get to C here, bullet C, understanding the requirements by our solution architect. This is when somebody, and if you're a smaller company, it could literally be you if you own the company and you're the SME. But you have this idea of looking in and you really understand it. You're like, we can do this. This is in our sweet spot, right? So you give yourself 3 points. And then B is when, as you're moving forward, right, the requirements have been clarified and you've had a chance to get into the program office and discuss some of your recommendations with the customer. This is a huge deal in capture. those of us who like monitor people who are doing capture to see how well you're doing, we look to see if you're getting into the program office, you're getting in and having conversations. And so if you're not talking to the program manager or the program office, then you have no real idea of the requirements. You just have an ability to read them off a piece of paper, but an understanding comes from discussing it with the customer, right? And so number A, or bullet A here, the customer implements our recommended changes to the requirements. This is the ultimate score for requirement understanding. If you're able to get in and have such good conversations that the customer's like, oh, we should go this direction, then you're able to start shaping those requirements. And that's vital for capture. I used to do that on opportunities where it was SharePoint focused because we knew so much about SharePoint. But anytime we kind of went outside of our box, like we got a large enterprise architecture contract once, we were shaping the opportunity or the requirements on the SharePoint side. But when it came to EA, we were less strong on that. And so we would get less points. So that's requirement understanding. The second one is, does this opportunity align to our core competencies? Every company should have a list of, 3 to 6 core competencies that say, this is what we do, 3 statements. So I have a customer that says we do admin support and we do IT support. This is basic IT support, not engineering or anything. And like help desk, if you will. And so admin support, IT support, and deaf communication access or American Sign Language. Well, those 3, we're looking for an alignment. So when an opportunity comes in and we're looking at it, the first thing we want to do is to see if it's matching our requirements. If it doesn't, it's 0 points. And really at that point, you should be throwing it out of your pipeline. But as you go forward and you start looking at it, there's minimal alignment. 25% of the task area is aligned to our core competency. Okay, it's certainly, it tells me that I shouldn't be priming this, but I get a point, right? And as it comes forward, the next bullet is requirement has some task areas that align to our core competency. And you can see where it just goes 25, 50%, 75%, and 100%. It's basically the next 4 points that you go up in your scoring is how tightly is this requirement aligned to my core competencies? The more tightly it is where the requirement task areas align exactly to our core competencies, then it's 100% match and we get 4 points. The top level score is when the requirement task areas are aligned exactly with our core competencies and we have firsthand experience with this particular scope at the customer. That's a big deal. That's a huge deal because obviously we're going to talk about past performance in a second, but being able to align task areas to core competencies, and yes, we're doing it right there, is really strong. So we're doing that understanding. Now we're going into and understand the requirements, the core competency alignment. Now I'm looking at the past performance. Do we have any past performance? When we look at this, if we have no experience in this task area in this agency, we get 0 task or 0 points, right? And it's the same process as it moves forward. If we have basic experience, we get a few more points. Solid experience with some task areas, we get 2 points, and we get 3 points here on the C bullet when we have solid experience with most of the task areas. This is really where I want to be when I'm deciding whether we're priming or subbing. If I can't get to this area, then why am I thinking I'm going to prime, right? I'd rather sub with somebody and begin to build that up. And then as you go forward, though, that was solid experience with most task areas. Now we're saying we have 1 exact past performance match with the requirements and 2 relatable matches. So now we're trying to look at past performances that really align to the work that needs to be done. And the ultimate score for past performances is when you have 3 exact past performances that match this requirement. Going back to my last company, when we did SharePoint, we would go after all the SharePoint migration projects we could get because every year we had multiple past performances doing SharePoint migration from here to here. That's exactly what the customer was looking for, right? The more we start going outside of that strong area, the lower our points are for past performance. But you can see as I'm working forward. So now we get into, that was looking basically at the requirements and what's required in the RFP when it will drop, right? This a lot of stuff we can know ahead of time. But here we want to have an understanding of the agency and an understanding of the customer, which is the next slide. This is where we truly start differentiating ourselves from most of the competition who just sees an RFP and responds, or even sees an RFI, responds, and waits for the RFP and responds, right? They really haven't sought to understand the customer. And when you're writing a proposal, the guidance is seek first to understand, then to be understood. The proposal is trying to help them understand us and our solution. This capture activity we do is helping them see that we sought to understand them. And the proposal would reflect that through what we share. And so here, the first one I said was agency. And then after that is the program office that actually has the requirements. So first, if I'm looking at the Department of Army, do I understand what the Army's mission? Or if I'm working with 𝗪𝗔𝗕𝗏 and I want to support one Naval Surface Warfare Center that's under 𝗪𝗔𝗕, well, before I look at the Naval Surface Warfare Center, I want to look at Naval Sea System Command, or 𝗪𝗔𝗕, and the Navy, and just understand that agency. That's fundamental to business development and capture in the federal market. So I give myself 0 points if I don't understand the agency. As I move forward and I understand their mission, their vision, I've looked at their organization, how they're structured, I give myself a point. I've been doing some business development. This is really where business development constantly is reinforcing the capture effort. The third bullet, D, is an understanding of the agency. I've taken the time to read their strategic plans, their budget, their annual report for the previous fiscal year. I've looked at this and seen what they're proud of, what long-term goals they have and immediate goals, and what challenges they're facing. I understand this agency from paper, right? That gets me 2 points. When I move to the next level, C, this is where I'm having agency conversations with people. And so I say strong agency understanding, but I have no influence yet. I've just talked with at least 3 agency points of contact. And so that means I'm in there, I'm talking to different people. I teach this all the time when I help people in our workshop, where it's visibility, targeting, and outreach, right? This idea of outreach, being able to call and reach into an agency. And one of the things I say early on is don't go in trying to talk about opportunities right away. First, go in there and just seek to understand that agency and to talk to as many people as you can to begin to build on each conversation to help you become more knowledgeable and to help you ask more questions, which potentially then is leading you to this point of B, where you're a trusted advisor to the agency through continued contact, continued conversations. Let's say you do AWS software development. You're coming in and talking about what's kind of new with Amazon Web Services. What are some of the new best practices that we should be tracking? What's going on in the industry? When you have those conversations, they're seeking your advice. You're becoming a subject matter expert. And I've taught a lot of training on that, but this is where you want to be, right? And so this is why I look at my capture people and say, are you out there building those relationships? And then the top score for agency understanding is that you're a proven vendor within this agency with solid understanding of the agency as well. So not only are you just in there, but you have the earlier 4 bullets as well. You've met with other people than just that contract. You've begun to have conversations. I have a customer actually who has been in one of their customers for quite a long time, but they feel like they've begun to really understand this agency so much more in just the past month or 2 than they have before. And they're getting excited about it because they keep learning different things and seeing how they can help this customer more and more. And so you want to be able to do this. One thing I want to pause before I move forward is this is what large businesses look for. They look for small businesses who have agency understanding. Sometimes you hear it as agency intimacy, this awareness of the agency, their policies, how they do things, how they work, people, you can get in the door. That when you think about agency understanding, it's not just for one opportunity, it's over and over. All right, so the next one is customer understanding. How well do you understand the customer who has this requirement? And so I said a minute ago, the agency, let's say, is the Navy, and 𝗪𝗔𝗕𝗏 is a major systems command underneath the Navy, but the customer is actually, let's just say, Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane. Man, I hope it's surface, not underwater or undersea. But either way, all right, let's just say Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane. That's the customer. Now it's about how well do you understand this customer? And so you do the same exercise as I did at the high agency level, but down here, how well do you understand them? If you're not interacting with them, you've got 0 points. This tells us that we need to get in that door and start talking to them. At the very least, I want you to get 1 more point on your overall PWin score by having an initial contact with the customer. And this could be just an industry day follow-up. You go to an industry day where I've seen industry days recently where you see the program office out, you have a basic conversation, anything like that, you could call it a win and give yourself a point because you're starting to talk to that customer. Then you're moving forward into the next bullet where you've met with the customer and you've actually discussed the requirements with them. You can't do this when you're really close to the RFP dropping, but you can do this early on. That's the whole idea of capture being 6 to 24 months out, it gives you more than enough time to start making those relationships, building them, and then getting in and having a conversation about the requirements, just chatting with them, where they're going. That's perfect. The next step forward, C, is when you've gotten back in. It's one thing to have one meeting. It's another for somebody to invite you back or be willing to have you come back. This is where you're starting to transfer a relationship from just a person you know in the program office, the customer, to a strategic relationship. If they're willing to talk with you multiple times, that is a very, very good sign from a capture perspective. And so you get 3 points if you've had multiple meetings with the customer, and you got a good understanding of their strategic goals related to this opportunity that's in the pipeline. You're understanding where it's coming from, why it's there. And then you get 4 points for B here, when you're working with a customer to develop and shape requirements. And this one is the ultimate capture, right? I mean, the next one's really good, but this is the ultimate one, because when you do this, A is almost assured. And so this B bullet where you get 4 points is when you're working with a customer, you have multiple conversations, and you're talking to them with data and evidence about the requirements and helping them shape it. When you think about an RFI, request for information, that really is the purpose of that, is for the government to engage industry. You want to be one of those people who are engaging industry. So when you look in your pipeline, if you were measuring your opportunity the way I'm defining here, then you would be giving yourself 4 points. You would be looking for 4 points on as many of your opportunities as possible. And then the ultimate score here for customer understanding is when the customer asks you, the program office, not the acquisition shop or the contracting officer, but when the program office says, hey, make sure you guys are responding to this. We really want you to see you respond. They're not giving you an unfair advantage. They're just saying, we want you to respond. We like you guys. We think you'd be a good fit. Whether you win or not, it's up to you, but respond, right? You want them to get to that stage. The next part of the PWin that you want to be tracking on is, I've alluded to this, where as you go after opportunities, sometimes you're going to sub, sometimes you're going to prime. Every opportunity you like, you should determine sub it, prime it, or abandon it pretty fast, right? If you can't figure that stuff out, then you need to reevaluate your process for bid, no bid, right? Especially in that early stage. And by the way, if you choose one or the other, except abandon, it's totally cool to change your mind later when you have more and more information. So teaming partners, though, are vital. I talk about getting teaming partners even when you don't need them, as you start getting above $1 million, because you start building the relationships. There are literally opportunities out there that say, if you want to team, you must show us that you have worked together before, because we don't want to sit there and have to deal with you two not getting along. Yeah, that's paraphrasing what the government wants, right? So teaming partners, as you do the scoring, right, there's no teaming partner in place, so you always start at 0. And then as you start identifying the needs and you fill out a teaming partner worksheet, it's a separate training I've taught, you give yourself 1 point, because I've identified what do I need from a teaming partner. The next one is discussions with possible teaming partners has begun. This is where you're reaching out to people and say, hey, this is an opportunity we're going after. Can you do it? Once you start doing that, give yourself 2 points. Once you lock on the teaming partners, right, and you've got NDAs in place and they're going to take these task areas, you're going to take these, then you can give yourself 3 points. But only once you've written that down on an email at least, right? You have to have at least an email confirmation saying, hey, Jane, you guys got task areas 1, 2, 3. We got 4, 5, 6. Sound good? And when they reply and say, sounds good, that's a good initial stage. Plus you got your non-disclosure agreement in place if you need it. And then B, where you're getting 4 points, is when you actually fully execute the teaming agreement. By the way, make sure you get that done as soon as you can to define the split on proposal writing. A lot of people think about teaming agreements for when the opportunity is won, a contract's awarded, but the teaming agreement should also say, what are you doing for capture? What are you doing for proposal writing? Teaming is the entire life cycle. It's not for the win. It's not after the win, I mean. And then the last one is you get 5 points if the teammates that you have chosen actually have agency experience. Even if you're going to prime and you've got the 3 past performances, give yourself that last extra point if you're also coming in with another company who can bring more credibility to the past performance there. So I'm just tracking my time. I'm running out pretty fast, but pricing, when you start getting to this, you start giving yourself points the same way. One of the key ones I'm looking for is you give yourself 2 points when you actually talk with the government and you got an understanding of that budget. You know, where are they in that budget? And then the next 3 just begin to align to your pricing and your price to win. That'll be a whole separate training. But my point is you want to give yourself more and more points as you align your price to your key staff and then all staff so that you can be competitive. You do not want to be LPTA, and so you want to understand that. Competition, to be frank, I tend to avoid competition because it is just so unknown. So anybody just responds at the last moment, frankly. But as you move forward, you could do the same thing, right? This idea of having a basic understanding of the competitive landscape, right? Once you have that understanding and you start doing a little bit more digging, you can understand your position. In some opportunities, like one of the contract vehicles that is coming out is ITES 4S. And the government is actually sending all interested parties a list of all interested parties. And so you have an idea and you can begin to look at that. If you're lucky on certain conversations you're going to have, the customer will allude, this is really the program office or even the contracting office, I guess, but they'll allude to where you're at. Now, we kind of like these other guys. We love the customer. You hear people say this a lot. The incumbent's well-loved. What's the point of going after it, right? Knowing this kind of information is important. And the last one is staffing, right? Staffing is one of the latest things you need to do. It's why it's the last slide. But the idea of, are you engaging your staffing and recruiting people in your company, right? Have you identified what you think those FTEs are going to be that are needed, full-time equivalent employees, right? Have you identified those? Have you talked to your recruiter about what's your approach? How are we going after the incumbent staff? How are we going after new staff? And then have we actually developed a job description, the personnel requirements for those labor categories we need? And the same thing as it moves forward, right? You're just giving yourself some points. So by the way, I said here's what I want you to remember, but I said put rock the PWin in the chat if you want me to take this information I just shared and put it into a newsletter article where you can download some of the slides and I expand on some of the explanation. If you want that, put that into the chat. But either way, take what you just learned today, go back to your pipeline and pick your favorite opportunity, the one that you really hope your company wins. And from that, apply the score that I just gave, right? I just laid out those 9 areas and apply those scores. And the 10th step is to combine them to see what your score is. Those scores, by the way, add up to 100 points, roughly. And you want to get to that, or 100%, and you want to get to that stage of 100%. For a winning proposal score. And that guidance that I laid out, that'll take you down that path. Hey, just for all of you, as we're wrapping up here, just remember, government contracting, capture, trying to get your PWin increasing, none of this is a secret. It's just a process. When you follow that process, you're going to have predictable, repeatable results. That's what I want for you. I hope you apply the score to your opportunities and start winning more. I'll see you in the next training.